of course we had the assignments to read at home, then we read aloud in class, and the only time I remember really getting in trouble, I remember whether this was in the 3rd grade or the 4th grade, Miss McIver was my teacher. There was a story, and this horse had gotten mired in the mud, and of course he had the most horrible looking face, you know, and you know how in school or church or somewhere where you're not supposed to laugh and giggle, things are the funniest. I got to giggling and couldn't stop. And I had a little punishment for that. That's the only time I remember in school.
What happened to you?
I had to stand in the corner. Shouldn't be telling this, but then one of my friends who lived right up the hill from me told her mother, and she went down and told my mother before I could get home, you know how like people like to tell tales. So of course back then you got punishment at home as well. It wasn't that my little dear can't do anything wrong. If you did it wrong away from home, you got it when you got home too.
It was math. It was the main thing I remember, going up and doing math problems. And that pressure of, am I going to get it right? Is the teacher going to, you know, kind of belittle me in front of everybody in the whole classroom? But you'd go up in a group. It'd be of like 5 of us, you know, your next 5, you'd go up and stand and do, you know, subtraction problems. That's what I remember thinking, oh, I might not be able to do that one, you know, I can do. And then when you're borrowing and putting that line through, and that was obviously the way it was done then, you know, and carrying over, and that was a little bit of pressure there as far as, you know, whether I would get it right.
Of course, we didn't have that many activities. I was thinking about it earlier. Sometimes the girls would play hopscotch in a cleared spot out from the Elon library, and we had basketball goals, but there wasn't much organized, not any phys ed or anything back at that time.
Jump rope, and also there was 3 little girls that went there, and they had tap dancing shoes, and we would go to the Elon Village Library, and there was a concrete floor there, porch there, just a little small porch, and they would put on a show for us at recess.
I know we used to play hopscotch, jump rope. We had, as well as I remember, we had one basketball hoop. We had a basketball we could play, and we'd play. I don't remember whether it was we had softball or baseball, but we played ball, and the boys and girls played together.
I remember the boys did not want the girls to play football. We were supposed to go do something else, and so I remember having to have an awful lot of stitches in my knee, because playing football, I was determined to tackle the one guy that kept telling us that girls couldn't play football, and so I did just a diving tackle around caught him around the knees, but split my knee open.
The girls had this game of jumping off the porch into the boys' arms. Well, only the older girls did it, you know, but I was always a daredevil, so I thought, why can't I do that? So I was jumping off the porch and coming back around and jumping again, and I was ready to jump, and Tyler Fortune stepped out. Boys and girls, go to my room. First grader, I was scared to death.
Oh, recess was so much fun. I mean, there was the playground itself, the merry-go-round and the swing set. But I remember mainly playing in the woods, and we formed these little, swamp fox. We would go out into the woods, and everybody had their part.
First grade teacher was Miss Ethel Tinsley. A real good teacher. Everyone loved her. And so I don't know how many times a week, but she would put a big pot of beans, maybe white beans, that someone, always the parents would furnish those. And she'd put those beans on, and at lunchtime we were given big mugs, and she had a large table in there, and we would sit around and enjoy that. And Tyler Fortune was principal at that time. He was he was principal and maybe his first assignment, and he studied law. That was what he was studying, to be a lawyer when he was there. And all of his big law books on the table. And Mr. Fulcher would come, we could hear him. He had stomping across the auditorium, and he smelled the beans cooking, and he would come get his mug of beans. And we always, you know, snickled about that. We thought that was funny.
During the Second World War, we had to take cod liver oil. Of course, they were concerned about kids with their bones and rickets and so forth. And you would take that cod liver oil. They would have, each person, of course, would have a fresh spoon. You take your cod liver oil and drop it in a dishpan.
You couldn't throw the morning milk away. And I wasn't that big of a milk fan, but I did drink all my milk. There was someone that decided they couldn't finish their milk, and I actually did find out who that was later, but she had gone and set her milk carton in the trash can, and it ended up getting turned over. So the teacher was very upset because milk was leaking out of the bottom of those metal trash cans, and you know, that it created a smell and not a good thing. And we could not go out for recess until someone confessed that they were the ones that had put that milk in. And we stayed in for like 3 days. And of course, recess at that time was extremely important. And I thought, well, it's not that big of a deal if you just say, I mean, you might have to miss another recess and sit on the steps. But, you know, somebody did it. I didn't know at that time, but I thought, I can be the one. You know, I can be the one that put that milk in there, even though I did not. So I went up and whispered to the teacher that I had been the one that had placed, I wasn't able to finish all my milk, and I had placed that milk carton in the trash can. And she thanked me very much, and during recess that day, when everyone else went out, I did sit on the steps. There were large steps outside those larger doors to the side that I was talking about, and I sat on the steps, and it was just one day. And a couple days later, my friend Faye came to me and said, thank you very much. She said, I was scared to death to tell her. You know,
one thing I remember in particular, of course, it was during the Second World War, that they'd have peanut butter sandwiches, raisins on peanut butter sandwiches, and you could usually count the raisins about 5 or 6 on a whole sandwich, so you didn't get many raisins. Of course, the peanut butter was good for you.
The teachers for lunch, I remember you had to eat everything. In 3rd and 4th grade, we had to eat everything on our plates. And so if you didn't like anything, you were just out of luck. So that year we were, majority of schools, the girls were required to wear skirts. But at Elon, because we had coal stoves, and if it snowed, there were enough cracks that the snow would pile up in the back of the room. So we were allowed to wear pants. And I had several pair of lined jeans that I was able to wear, and they took a beating with the food because I would wrap up whatever food I did not want, and I tried putting it in. I was like lactose intolerant, but they made me drink the milk. So that was always a problem. And I think at that time, parents just didn't come to school and say, no, you can't make my kid do this. So I would try to hide my food in the milk carton, but usually it was so full of milk, and she would shake it, and if your milk carton, or if you didn't eat everything, you didn't go out to recess. But I carried my food home in my pockets wrapped in napkins. I remember stewed tomatoes were a problem. I always had to stay in for recess if we had stewed tomatoes, because I couldn't figure out how to get the tomatoes not to leak in my...
I think I pretty much liked everything about it. I mean, it was, you know, again, growing up in a small community like that, you had the school, which was sort of the center activity. You had the Presbyterian church and the Baptist church, and almost everybody went to one of those. And you had the American Legion There were annual events there, and so it was, in growing up in that sort of environment. I mean, it just doesn't happen anymore. I mean,